Hi everyone. It's been a long time since I made a video just because I've been so busy. It's like a different angle than what I usually do because everywhere is a mess in my place right now. So this is like the only place that's showable on camera, even though it's still a big mess. Like, oh my gosh. My sweet daughter is 2 weeks old now. I just wanted to make a video about my induction story. I do have footage of the day that she was born, but I feel like this video might be a little on the negative side because I didn't have a really good experience that footage in the same video, because I want those footage to remind me of a joyful and happy day because that's the day that she was born. So this isn't going to be like a run through of exactly what happened that day with the times and everything, because that's more like a vlog. This is just a video saying like the exact induction process that I went through, because I didn't expect to have to be induced, and I had no idea what was going to happen, and it was just all really confusing and happening so fast. So hopefully somebody can watch this and kind of have an idea of what they're getting themselves into. I have to apologize in advance if you are Hi. This is Hi. I have to apologize in advance if you are planning a natural and medicated birth, or if you just want to hear really positive stories. Please don't watch this video because it was kind of traumatizing for me. But if you want to know the process of my induction, then here it is. So my induction started because I went in for a non-stress test, and based on the test and just based on how overdue I was, they decided to induce me right away that day. The first thing they did is do a cervical check, and I was like not dilated at all. The OB, so I have a midwife, but because I have to be medically induced, I actually had to go to the hospital, and then the OB took over of my care. So he did a cervical check, and he literally said that my cervix was open to maybe like a fingertip if he really like pushed his fingertip in. So basically I like wasn't really dilated at all. And prior to this, I didn't even get a memory sweep done like I was supposed to, because this is all just like really unplanned. So then the first thing that they had to do was to insert a Foley catheter. A Foley catheter, if you don't know it, oh, the little one's sneezing. A Foley catheter is usually what they use to put up the urethra to it's to like drain urine from the bladder. So it's this long like rubber tube, and at the end it has an inflatable balloon, and depending on the size, there's different amount of water you can put to inflate the balloon to make it like bigger or smaller. So what they did is they used the same apparatus used to do a pap smear. So they open up your vagina, and then they thread the Foley catheter up the cervix, and then they push like saline solution to make the balloon inflate. So the balloon is actually sitting, I always thought the balloon was sitting like in my cervix to stretch it open, but actually they thread it past your cervix, and the balloon is sitting on like the baby side of the cervix, if that makes any sense. And then I had that in for almost 16 hours, and after they insert the balloon, so after the catheter is in, they kind of pull it so there's tension, and they tape it to your leg. So the whole time the balloon is kind of being like pulled like this. That mechanism is supposed to manually dilate your cervix. So they said that 3 things to look out for that could potentially happen. 1, the balloon could come out because it bursted. So if it bursted and the catheter came out, when you look at the balloon, it's not inflated anymore. It's just completely gone because the balloon has bursted. If that happens, they have to reinsert the balloon again. 2, you might feel a gush of fluid coming out, and that's just your water breaking, but the balloon is still inside. If that happens, they have to manually, I think, remove the balloon or something like that. And then the 3rd option is it falls out on its own, which is what you want, because that means that your cervix has opened wide enough for the balloon to come out on its own. So after around 16 hours, I stayed at the hospital overnight. And then in the morning, OB resident came and she was just tugging on it. So the whole night I could feel the catheter getting longer and longer because I had to tape it to my leg, and I felt that it was getting like less and less tight. So then I myself had tape beside my bed, and then during the night, if I feel like it wasn't tight enough, I would just pull on it more and then tape it so it's tighter, so the balloon, the pressure of the balloon is being constantly like pulling against my cervix. So then in the morning, the OB resident came, and then she said, oh, you know what, like I think this can just be pulled out. And I was like, what? And then she just yanked it out. Like she just yanked the balloon out of my cervix. So that was unexpected. I kind of thought they would just let it fall out on its own, but anyhow, so they yanked the balloon out. It was kind of painful, but it wasn't like too bad because I guess it was ready to come out in the next few hours anyways. But after that, I immediately lost my mucus plug, and then I started having these like period crampy feelings, but they were really dull and they were really mild, so I didn't think my contractions were starting. But I think now, like looking back, it's probably the start of little contractions. So then the next thing they had to do, because my water wasn't broken, was to manually break my water. This part was really painful for me because the person who did it said that my cervix was really back. So in order for her to break my water, she kind of have to like pull it forward or something, and then basically break the water, like break the sac that the baby's in. I didn't get to see what kind of tools she were using, so I'm not sure if she just used her finger with a glove to like break it, or if she had like a little pin or needle, or I don't know, something. I think that once somebody told me that they use an apparatus kind of like a crochet hook. It's like a little hook, and they just go inside and they just pop it. But anyway, they broke my water, and it just felt like a gush of warm fluid came out. And after the water was broken, for sure the contractions were starting. But within minutes of the water being broken, the OB said that she wants to put me on the Oxytocin drip. So immediately I was started on the Oxytocin drip, and it was like a very small dose. But because my contractions were pretty regular on their own already, this made it like really consistent. And the thing that I didn't like the most about the Oxytocin drip, it wasn't that it kept my contractions going, but it was almost like constant. Even in between contractions, I was still contracted. Like I could still feel contractions, even though they're like, oh well, now don't worry, you're gonna get a break soon. And then the whole time I had to be hooked on the non-stress test. And so the non-stress test, there's the baby's heartbeat, and then on the other side there's another reading called the TACO or something that actually measures your uterine activity. And when I was looking at the numbers, like I was constantly contracted. So that lasted maybe 7 or 8 hours for me, because at that point I still wanted to do an unmedicated birth. But in the end, it got to a point where it was just like, it was unbearable. So I did end up getting an epidural. And just a word about my epidural, because I didn't want one for so long and I held out for so long, in the end I decided to get it, and I was already 8 centimeters dilated. And the contractions were just like super bad. I had back labor, and then I also felt everything in the front too. And because I was always like almost in a constant state of contraction, like my whole body would shake, and then anyway, so then it was hard for me to stay still for the epidural to go in. So now looking back, it's like the moment that I knew that I was getting medically induced, I think I should have gotten the epidural sooner. And then I pushed for maybe 3 hours. Luckily I was able to find the right muscles to push, that I didn't need like forceps or vacuums or any other interventions to get her out. I did end up tearing just because I was on the just because I was on the epidural. And that's what happened at my induction. I don't mean this to be a negative video to bring anybody down or to like put fear in your mind. I just think that if I did my research better and I kind of knew the steps of an induction in more detail and exactly what happened, maybe I would be more prepared to deal with it. But because it happened all so fast and it was just kind of like out of the blue, it just took me by surprise. And all these things, like I had to be induced every step of the way. Like nothing natural happened, you know? So I think that's why it was kind of traumatizing for me. So I hope that you could find this video somewhat helpful. And good luck to you in the rest of your pregnancy. And if you're gonna give birth soon, I hope you have a smooth and safe and enjoyable birth. And if you're a new mom, being a new mom is hard. I'm like, it's so hard, but we're doing it and it's getting done. Okay, until next time, bye everyone.